Hello and welcome to my latest instalment of my C# for Beginners series. This time we're going to be looking at lists and arrays. So let's start by talking about what a list is. Lists are found in all kinds of walks of life. One of the most common that people use on a regular basis is a shopping list, and you add items onto it. You can cross items off it as you finish with them. And it works in a very similar way, as do arrays. The big difference between lists and arrays: lists you can add more items in and you can remove items, and the size of the list will change dynamically as you add or remove items. An array, however, is a fixed size. Once that size is set, it cannot be changed. So we have the first element in this case will be 0 or index 0, and this is a string list, so that'd be word 1. Index 1 could be word 2 or element 2. Index 2 is the third entry, and that will just keep going up and up and up and up. So let's start with arrays. How do we define an array? So we start by declaring the type of data that will be held in the array, followed by a square bracket. And then we're going to give the array variable a name. Now this can be more or less any name. I'm just going to make it very clear by saying this is an array of strings. And then we're going to use the equal sign as an assignment operator. And then we're going to give us the new keyword. So we've got a new array of integers. Now, as I said, it does have to be a fixed size. So typically you will put the size in here. And if you want to declare the contents of an array straight away, rather than just leaving them blank, you put in the squiggly brackets, and then we can add in some numbers, such as 5, 1, 10, 16, 20. As always in C#, they end with a semicolon. We could do a similar thing with strings. String, I can type, string array with square brackets. Sorry, my apologies. String array. Some of you might have noticed a typing mistake here. That should be ints. This time we're going to have an array strings equals new string array. And then we're going to add in some strings. Now these, because they're strings, need to go in quotes. So word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4, word 5. Again, we're going to end on the semicolon. So that's got that one created. Now, we do not have to define these with all the contents to start with. I can just do that to state that a new array has been created, or a new list has been created, a new array in this case. And they're empty. Lists are very, very similar, but the syntax looks slightly different. So we're going to create a list first of all. One of the key differences is that we start with a list, then we put in the type, in this case int, and this is going to be list ints, and then we're going to equal new list int, and that would create an empty list. Just like before though, we can add these values in straight away, so I can type in You will have noticed when I've done this, there's no size here. I haven't set a size anywhere. That's because this is dynamic. This can increase or decrease in size. Similar idea for strings. So list of type string. List strings equals new list string. Okay, so that's that bit, and you know, just like before, we don't have to do this bit. We can just declare it as an empty string. I am using Rider at the moment. I shall flip across to Visual Studio in a moment just to show you that as well. Okay, so now we've got a list and an array. I'm just going to add these bits back into the array so that we've got some content there. And then because we've stated this has 5 in, I need to add one more element here. So put a comma with 5. Just to make sure that we've matched these up nicely, I'm going to put that 5th one into here as well. Right, so now how do we access these? We could do something like integer number 1 equals, and then array ints, and this bit's basically exactly the same for both lists and arrays, and we're going to choose the index number that we want. So if I want to show word 4, I'll need index 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to put 3 in there. And what we can also do is combine that with the console write line statement. So console dot write line, and then I can throw that all of that inside there. And we can do a very similar thing for strings. Console dot write line list strings, and then we're going to give it an index number, and we'll do 3 again. And let's run that. So I've left that in so that we can see that that's still there. And then we come down and we've got a 16 and a word 4. So why is that? Well, the first one is this line here. So we're array ints and we're at index number 3. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3. That's 16. And in this one here, we've got index 3 again. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and that's word 4. And we can assign values in almost exactly the same way. So here we go. We've got our lists, and I'm just going to put those back actually. So we've got our two console write lines, and then we're going to update those values so you can see the change. So this time we're going to say list of integers, and we're going to square brackets, and we're going to set the index number to 3 again, equals. Now let's make it obvious. So let's make that 300. And then we're going to do, oh sorry, that should be array ints, shouldn't it? Array ints. Because we're pulling from that one and that one the moment these two are ignored. They've been created, but we're not actually outputting anything from them. So array ints is now 300. List strings, and again I'm going to change the third one. We're assigning a new value to it, and I'm just going to call it new string. Okay, so let's now output these console write lines again and run it. So that's the initial line at the top. Then we've got the first console write line and the second, which is there and there. This is what we saw before. But now, because of this, the value stored is 300 and it's now new string. So we've written to or assigned new values to those elements. So let's have a look at removing a list element. We can't remove an array element. Remember that an array is a fixed size. So once it's been set, we can't do anything about it. It's fixed. Whereas a list, we can dynamically change the size. So we'll start with just a list of strings. And I'm going to copy paste this actually, because it'll just make things a little bit quicker for me. And then we'll talk through the code. This is underlined in red because I've copy pasted it and I typed that myself before. So I'm just going to update this to string list. And now that will all match. So what this is doing, it's going to output a line called initial list. Then it's going to say the index 0, and we're going to output the value of index 0. Same for index 1, 2, 3, and 4. At this point, it's going to output that we are removing index 1. We're going to do the actual removal by doing string.removeAt, and I'll type that one in. So it's stringlist.removeAt 3. Then we're going to output it all again. We've removed one element, so this list is now only 4 elements long, so we've only got index 0, 1, 2, and 3. The second method we can use for removing an item is to remove the first item that matches a particular string. So in this case, we're going to remove the first item that matches word 3. And then, because we're going to be removing an item, we're going to remove 1 from here. So we're going to output index 0, 1, 2, and 3, because this is now only going to be 3 items long. Okay, So that's your start, that's the full one, and there's your output here. So because I've been talking about the size of these, let's actually take a look at that. We can get that count relatively easily. So let's put that back in. Delete all that. An integer. List size. Again, we're just going to give it an obvious name equals string list dot count array size equals array strings dot length. That's it. Slight differences in syntax here, but it's doing essentially the same thing. And then we're just going to put in a couple of console.writeLine statements again. First one will be list size, console.writeLine. Second one will be array size. And if we want to, we could do more. In fact, let's add it in. So all I'm doing is I'm adding in the words list size and a colon before the actual list size. The plus operator just concatenates that onto the end of those words. So we can see we've got list size 5, list size 5. Now, you may have noticed that in here, I haven't put the size. I haven't done that. If we are putting these elements in at the time that we create the array, we don't need to specify the size because it knows how many elements there are based on the contents. If that's not there, you absolutely do have to specify the size. If you're starting with each element being empty, you have to specify the size of the array. And that really covers it. I did say I would flip quickly across to Visual Studio to show you the same idea in there, and I shall do that now. Okay, so we're in Visual Studio, and it's going to be a very similar thing. Integer, square brackets for an array, and then it's going to be an integer array equals new int, and we can set this value to whatever we want, 5. Okay, so list of type integer, and I can autofill lots of this. And this is a thing, again with your IDEs, please remember you don't have to type everything. And if I want to, I can add these other bits in like this. Oh no, I haven't got that to copy paste handy. Let's just do it. 140 80 minus 400, and we need one more because it's 5 minus 2000. Doesn't matter, the order is unimportant. Each element just contains one integer, and I can do exactly the same here. If I want to define or add these at the time of creation, I can do the same thing. Again, strings would be almost the same. So list, and this time we're going to do of type string. String list equals new list string. Put in that part, and we can stop there if we want to create an empty list, or we can do that. Now, the only thing that's really left to cover is adding new items to a list. We've done removing, but I skipped over adding. So let's start with an empty list. I can do string list dot add string list dot add word 2 string list dot add word 3 string list dot add word 4 and that's just created exactly the same list that we had before with a list of strings, word 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we could do console.writeline. Oh, so we don't want string lists because that would give an unexpected result. In fact, I'll run that to show you. See, that's just told us the name of the list in the system, basically, which isn't what we're going to want. So it's going to start with a 0 there. I'm just going to update these elements. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4. So if I run that this time, we can see it's added them all in. And that's it. We've covered creating arrays, we've covered creating lists, we've covered the fact that arrays are a fixed size and lists are dynamic, we've covered adding new items into a list, we've covered removing items from a list, and we have covered updating the contents of an element in a list or an array. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.